Throughout his earthly ministry, Jesus encountered thousands of people. He moved among the masses, and great crowds followed him everywhere he went. Even still, Jesus was moved with compassion for individuals. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Luke 19:10. He taught the masses,
but he reached out to the one.
He heard the crowd, but he healed the one. He saw the multitudes, but he saved the one. Do you see one?
Who's your one?
Hey, have you ever heard the phrase, curiosity killed the cat? Come on, let me hear it. Say yes if you've heard that. Yes, curiosity killed the cat. I heard that so many times. I don't know if it's because I was curious and my parents were trying not to get me to be curious, kind of Dennis the Menace type as a kid growing up. But curiosity killed the cat. And I don't like that saying. I'm just going to tell you. And it's not because of any type of love or affection for cats, because I promise you that's not there. But it's because I don't think that statement is 100% true. Now, there is some truth to it, right? There's some things that we should not do when our curiosity is piqued that we should stay away from. But I also think that curiosity creates something in us that's a little bit different that helps us grow and expand. And, in fact, one of the most famous curious cats I know had a ton of really cool adventures that they went on, right? This cat had friends, Sally and Nick. Thing 1 and thing 2, and they went around on this kind of thingamajigger, and they had all kinds of curious fun, right? Watch this clip, and I think you'll get who I'm talking about.
Here we go, 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 on an adventure, the thingamajigger is up and away.
Go, 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 on an adventure, we're flying with the cat in the hat today.
In the Woody Woods, we hope to see how to make paper out of a tree.
Here we go, 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 on an adventure, go, 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 go.
Kids, have you heard of Cat in the Hat? Let me hear you. Yes? Yeah, right? We have some of our interns who are a little bit younger. They're millennials, and they said that brought them back to their childhood and babysitting because they had younger kids. I do think that curiosity is okay. In fact, in a recent Harvard Business Review, one article noted this. It said, when curiosity is triggered, we are less likely to fall victim to what's called confirmation bias, and then we begin to stereotype people, right? And so what happens is curiosity, when it's killed, or when it's piqued, when it is piqued, we're less likely to fall victim to confirmation bias, and we don't fall into the trap of stereotyping people as much. So basically what they're saying is that when we aren't curious, we fall into the same traps. We fall into the same beliefs that we've always believed, and we don't fully explore what may be the right answer instead of just what we want the answer to be. So when curiosity is hampered, we don't have those types of things come out. I think confirmation bias and this notion of curiosity is vital in people on a journey with Jesus. And here's kind of an offer for me today. I think for those that are in the room that says, hey, I'm still processing my thoughts about Christianity. I'm still walking through what this may mean and what it may believe. I would just say, have a curious mind. Have a curious heart to where you are, and don't fall into the trap of confirmation bias. And on the flip side, those of you that would say, hey, I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe in what is said, and I believe in what is going on here. Also, at the same time, don't let your curiosity stop. Don't do what we did a couple of weeks ago when we said that people refer to their belief in Jesus and the Bible and Christianity as saying, oh, hey, it works for me because I was raised that way, or because it just worked for me, or because that's just always what I've believed. No. Find out how to be curious in your faith and how to continue to strengthen and dive a little bit deeper into your faith over and over and over again. You see, this is important, talking about curiosity and how it affects our beliefs and things, because we are looking at a very curious skeptic today. We are going to be wrapping up our Who's Your One series today. And over the past couple of weeks, we've looked at how Jesus goes after the one. So in the midst of crowds, in the midst of tons of people, you often find Jesus just pulling away and spending time with one individual, with one conversation, with one person. All of those people are ones that aren't people that would say, yeah, I've said yes to who you are and believe in. We looked at the paralytic, and how the paralytic was lowered through a roof by his friends that were focusing on the one. Last week, we took a deeper look into the woman at the well and the shame and guilt that she had, and how Jesus had a divine appointment with her at the well, and of all the things that he could do, and how he could go around Samaria like was custom. He went straight through because he was spending time with the one. And today, we're going to be looking at one of the more curious characters in all the Bible, Zaccheus. Now, I'm not going to sing this because I wasn't raised in a church home and I actually don't know this song, but it's Zaccheus was a wee little man and a wee little man. Okay, so some of you know this, right? So we're looking at this wee little man, Zaccheus, which, in fact, that song just makes me a little bit curious about why anybody would sing that song. And so I don't know. These ping pong balls, what you're wondering up here, these represent ones in our lives. So the past couple of weeks, we've been challenged to take a ping pong ball from the back of the room and write a name on it. Someone that we've just committed to praying for. Nothing more, nothing less. We're just going to pray for that one, that they would be curious about what it means to say yes to Jesus and to walk on a journey with Jesus. And so what I really love is that what we're looking at today, Luke chapter 19, in this story of Zaccheus. By the way, that's found on page 932 of the Black Bibles found throughout the room. If you don't own a copy of the Bible, that one is yours to take with you. We would love for you to have it. It's our gift to you. But what I love about this, and what I love about how we're ending this series here with Luke, is that Luke was the writer of this book, right? Luke, which is found in the Gospels. It's found in the Gospels, which are the kind of 4 books in the beginning of the New Testament that really look at the life, death, ministry, and resurrection of Jesus from 4 different vantage points. But here's what's really unique about Luke. He was also the writer of Acts, which is just a couple of books ahead in the New Testament. And so he was this writer, and Luke wrote with one person in mind. We have the book of Luke and the book of Acts because he wrote for one person, a man named Theophilus. And so Luke was actually the only New Testament writer that was what we call a Gentile, which just means that he was a non-Jewish person, right? And so of any of the New Testament writers, Luke would know what it was like that anybody could follow Jesus, that anybody could say yes to Jesus. No matter your past, no matter your present, and certainly no matter your future, Luke was one that would know what that would be like. And so Luke decided to write these 2 books for Theophilus, so that Theophilus could be sure and be certain of the person and work of Jesus. So I find it no coincidence that in a Who's Your One series, we find that Luke was writing for a man named Theophilus. And here's what we're going to see with Zaccheus. This is what I want you to walk out of here with today. Curiosity prepares your heart for an experience of grace. Curiosity will always prepare your heart for an experience of grace. So turn with me, 932. We're going to read it, pray, and then kind of dive into it. I'm going to be with Kids Point today and with kids in the room. I'm going to be storytelling a little bit more than normal, and so we're just going to walk through and just tell the story of Zaccheus and the implications of what it means to focus on the one. Let's read. It says this, it says, he, being Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. There was a man named Zaccheus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. Say the word and he was rich. That's important. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able to see because of the crowd, since he was a short man, or a wee little man, however you want to say it. So running around, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. When he came to the place, when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zaccheus, hurry and come down, because today it is necessary for me to stay at your house. So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. All who saw it began to complain, he's gone to stay with the sinful man. I could just hear him now. But Zaccheus stood there and said to the Lord, look, I'll give half my possessions to the poor, Lord. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much. Today, salvation has come to this house, Jesus told him, because he too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. Let me pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that you chase after the one. Thank you that standing right here on this stage today, I'm the one that you chased after. Lord, that I was the one in need. I'm still the one in need, Lord, and that you chased after me, Lord, a curious heart, so that I could say yes to you. I pray that this story would come to life today, God, and that we would see that curiosity prepares us for a just grace-filled experience with you. We love you, we praise you, and we thank you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so here we are. We have Jesus, who at this point is really growing in popularity, right? The crowds are beginning to attract around him. He's becoming a really popular guy. And by the way, if you don't notice, anytime you grow in popularity or you grow in influence, if you're a leader, anytime you grow in that area, you're also growing in an area where you have people that are opposing what you're doing, right? So Jesus has people that are growing in popularity to what he's doing, but he also has people that are growing and saying, no, sir, that's not the Jesus that would be the Messiah. That's not the Son of God, right? And so he's got this kind of conundrum going on where he's growing in popularity, but also growing with those that oppose him. And he's entering Jericho. Now, Jericho is Israel's most powerful city at this point. In context, I would liken it to go to New York City, right? So going to New York City, just imagine Jesus is going into New York City is what is happening here when he goes into Jericho. So booming, powerful city. And what's fascinating is if you think you would go into a city like that, you would probably immediately go to like powerful officials in the city, right? Maybe the mayor, he's going to see de Blasio, right? He's walking in, he's going to see de Blasio in New York City, or maybe the highest chief priest that is there. And if you have any background with Christianity or any type of knowledge of people and pastors in New York City, that would mean that Jesus was like, hey, I'm gonna go see Tim Keller, right? I'm gonna hang out, I'm gonna go see the mayor, and I'm gonna go see Tim Keller on the side. We're gonna go and we're gonna hang out. But no, Jesus, he goes and sees the most despised and hated man in the entire city. He goes and spends time with a wee little man, Zaccheus, right? And here's what he says in verse 2. It says, there was a man named Zaccheus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. That's kind of an oxymoron, and here's why. This may not seem like a big deal to you, but Zaccheus was a tax collector, which, if you're new to the Bible, that doesn't mean like IRS agent, like we just hate doing our taxes. It doesn't mean that at all. Here's actually what a tax collector was. See, Romans were taking over everything. And so the Romans are they're taking over all these cities. And to kind of put their hand down on these cities that they're going into, they would go in and they would begin to heavily tax every city. And so you would think that they would probably put their highest official from the Roman Empire in there. Wrong. What they would do is they would actually go in as they're taxing these cities, they would get an insider. So they would find somebody that was within this city that kind of knew the ins and the outs of the city, that knew where the money was going and where people were putting the money so that they could tax them even heavier. And so they get an insider. They find a guy like Zaccheus. They hire him to do this. And here's what they said. They said, hey, here's our limit. You tax right here. And then listen, bro, anything else you keep, anything you skim off the top of that, yours to take. We don't care what you do as long as we get this level right here. So when this says that he was a tax collector and he was rich, it means that Zaccheus was doing exactly what he needed to do with the Roman level of taxation. And then old boy was getting a lot off the top, right? I'm wearing a spiritual gangster shirt today because it just reminds me of like mafia stories where they skim off the top and do all that, right? So I'm thinking like, Zaccheus is just a spiritual gangster, right? And so I'm sitting there like, man, my guy is going in, doing what he's supposed to do and skimming way off the top because he is a tax collector and he is rich. And here's the deal. In Jewish culture, oral tradition has it at this. They would actually tell you that it wasn't a sin to lie to a tax collector. So here you have these people that adhere to the law like nobody else. And they're saying, hey, it's not a sin to lie to a tax collector, because this is what they said. A tax collector is like an animal, and the Bible doesn't say it's a sin to lie to an animal. So Zaccheus is basically an animal in the people's eyes. He's loathed. No one likes him. He's hated by everybody. But Zaccheus is curious. Look what it says in verse 4. Verse 4, it says, so running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. Now here we are, we have this really wealthy man, right, just running to see a guy like Jesus come in. And the fact that it mentions that he has to run, I'm imagining, and this means that he's having to run around because they've kind of boxed him out. These people are like, I'm not letting you in to see Jesus. You don't deserve to. You're a tax collector, right? So he's running around finding this tree because they boxed him out Because he's a wee little man. I personally don't have a problem with wee little men standing in front of me, and I'm only 5'10". Yeah, I don't know how tall he was, 5'1", 5'2", but I'd be okay with a 5'1", 5'2" standing in front of me. Not here, not where you're hated. And so he runs around, running, this wealthy man. I think of like Bill Gates, right? Like a Bill Gates. I'm just imagining him kind of prim and proper, running around all these people to see a guy like Tim Keller or somebody come in, right? So Bill Gates is just right. We can't imagine that because that's not what we're accustomed to. Yet, this curious little guy is wanting to find out about this Jesus guy. And so Jesus gets to this tree, and I just imagine all the crowds are following him. They're running through, and he's walking alongside. These people are like hanging on every word that he is about to say. And Jesus is walking, and then he just stops. And he looks up. He's probably at first thinking, well, it's a little awkward that somebody's in the tree. He's like looking up, and I just imagine all the people hanging on every word he is about to say and kind of maybe starting to wonder, like, well, why is he looking at Zaccheus? What is he about to say? And here's what Jesus says. He says, Zaccheus, hurry and come down, for it is necessary for me to stay at your house. So here we go. It is necessary. If you remember last week, Jesus had to go to and through Samaria to meet with the woman at the well. And here we are again. He says, it is necessary, Zaccheus, for me to stay with you tonight. Now, in the original language, this phrase, it is necessary, it refers to the word day, which just means divine. And so basically what Jesus is saying is, it is a divine appointment. God is moving this way, and in order for me to move along with where God is moving, you and I have to meet. We have an appointment in your house tonight. I can't get around it. I'm meeting with you, Zaccheus. It is necessary. See, Zaccheus' curiosity here is already paying off, right? I mean, dude is getting some one-on-one time with the guy that's telling everybody that he's the son of God. Zaccheus, this curious tax collector that nobody likes, is getting one-on-one time with Jesus. Stop right there, and the amount of grace that is in that exact statement is unthinkable. You see, Jesus not only says, I'm coming, but I must stay. I mean, of everyone in the crowd here, every single person that is by, he's saying, I must stay with you. And what you have to understand is that staying with somebody in a Middle Eastern culture back then, and quite frankly, even today, was a huge deal. It was a sign of peace. It was a sign of relationship. It was a sign of reconciliation. And it was a sign of approval. So Jesus is saying, I approve of who you are, Zaccheus, because I'm staying with you tonight. But what he was talking about was approving of who he was to be after that conversation. You see, everyone in the crowd is probably thinking, dude, why didn't he stay with me? Come on, man. Like, I'm an elite of the elite of religious people in this area. And I'm sure that Jesus probably could have spent some time with these religious people, right? Kind of got them on board with him being the Messiah, got them on board with him being the Son of God. He probably could have really spent some time doing some great work there to get the kind of grumbling crowd to flip their tone just a little bit. I mean, if you really think about it, Jesus blew a huge starting a church planting opportunity, in my opinion. I'm thinking, Jesus, what are you doing? You've got all these guys. They'd be great attenders because they already believe in all this. They know the Bible better than anyone else. Like, Jesus, these would be great people to start a church with, because then you could go out in the city and really start reaching some people. And Jesus says, no, I didn't have a divine appointment with them. He just looked up and said, hey, come down. Let's go. And I think the grace part here is because of who Zaccheus was and what he was doing. Jesus could have very easily looked up at that tree and said, hey, Zaccheus, get down right now. Stop doing what you're doing, skimming off the top, stealing from people, treating people poorly. Come down, ask for forgiveness, and stop doing it and turn from your wicked ways. And quite frankly, Jesus could have had every right and been just as just in doing that as he was by saying, I'm going to come and stay with you. He had every right to say those things because they were true. Yet Jesus chose not to do that. And I think here's the reason. Not every opportunity that you have to call someone out is an opportunity that needs to be taken. Because in my eyes, what I see here is that sometimes it is way more powerful to be known for grace than it is for justice. And some of us have been known way too much for justice. Some of us maybe have relationships with people that have been known way too much for justice. But it is way more powerful to be known for grace than it is for justice. And Jesus is showing that here. And if you continue to follow this story, as we will, or even look at other stories and look at it retrospectively with even the woman at the well or anybody else, or even the paralyzed man, you see that Jesus sees obedience from Zaccheus and all these other people, not by laying down the law, but from laying down love, from showing grace. That's where Jesus sees obedience. And sometimes that's a reminder for us that we need to do the same. And here's what I love. This is actually funny to me. This curious man, right? Now he's like a kid in a candy store. He's like, oh, like, Jesus, he just asked me to go. Like, oh, what are we going to do? Do I have any food ready? Like, my mind is going crazy at this point. I'm like, hey, can we just talk here? Like, my house is not picked up. You're the Son of God. You don't need to come into that. I've got 4 kids. Like, you don't want to see my house right now? But he's joyful. Here's what it says. It says in verse 6, so he came down quickly and welcomed him joyfully. Again, you have this wealthy, affluent, prim and proper guy that's like a kid in a candy store. Because his curiosity has prepared him for this exact meeting. You see, I can just see Zaccheus thinking like, okay, like, man, is he the Son of God? Or like, what is up with this guy? Something's different about him. I don't know. Like, maybe it is who he says he is. His curiosity is piqued and he's wanting to know more. But catch this, and don't miss it. Not everybody is as happy and joyful as Zaccheus here, right? The religious people, the churched ones, they're grumbling. I mean, listen to what it says. It says, all who saw it began to complain. Oh, he's going to stay with the sinful man. I mean, I can literally just feel people saying that. Jesus is now infuriated the church crowd. He's infuriated these people that should know better than anybody else who Jesus is because they know the law. They've studied it. They've understood it. He's come and fulfilled all these prophecies, and they should be the ones that capture what grace means. But he doesn't. And catch this. They're not curious. Not at all. They think they have it figured out. Confirmation bias is what I think of with these people. They don't really need to explore this Jesus guy because the Jesus that they know would never do the things that he's doing. So I'm just going to stay over here in my own confirmation bias, and I just know that Jesus would never do these types of things. No chance you're the Son of God. Maybe your name's Jesus, but you're not the Jesus Son of God. You're not Messiah, right? I just see them doing that. Then we fast forward just a little bit. Now, the next statement, we don't know if the next statement is after he gets down from the tree, maybe after dinner, or if it's the next day, because we know that he came to stay with him. But we do know this. Jesus has now revealed himself and who he is in every single ounce of grace that he has to offer Zaccheus, because he is focused on the one. He took time to spend time with the one. And Zaccheus then comes down, right? Jesus has left the crowds to spend time with him, the one, and we see a changed person. We see transformation take place in Zaccheus. He goes above and beyond. And let me pause right here and say this. Just because he goes above and beyond with some works right here doesn't mean that works bring anything on salvation. There is nothing we can do to earn God's saving grace and mercy on our lives. But what we do see here is that we see a man with a changed and transformed heart, and a transformed, changed heart is always a sign of a transformed and changed heart. These works that we're about to show that Zaccheus is like, I'm in. I have said yes. Here's what he says. He says in verse 8, look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor, Lord. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, bro, I'll give back 4 times as much. Now, again, contextually speaking, they were only required to give back 20% when these types of situations arose. But Zaccheus, this changed and now generous heart because of the grace that he's experienced through Jesus says, I'm in 4 times. I'm doing it. I've got a generous heart now. You know why? A generous heart, a generous filled heart comes from a grace-filled heart. A grace-filled heart is a generous heart. When we experience God's grace, we want to be generous in every area that we can with our time, effort, energy, and resources. Zaccheus is a changed man. Because of the grace, because of the mercy, because of the love of Jesus, we know this. There is not a single thing that Zaccheus had to do. I'm assured that Jesus told him that day, that afternoon, that night, he probably said, hey man, here's the deal. I'm doing it all. You don't have to do anything. I just need you to change and trust me as Lord of your life. To turn from these things and trust me. That's all you need to do. Zacchaeus is like, no, man, I'm in. I got this. I'm going to do it. Because we know that he has now experienced a Jesus like he had never seen or experienced before. And I love this next part. Jesus comes through and Jesus wants to let everybody know what happened. That we now have a new person that is a follower of Jesus. And he's letting all the haters know, basically. All these religious curmudgeon type of people, Jesus comes out, he goes, hey, verse 9. He says, today salvation has come to this house, Jesus told him, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. I cannot even imagine how much this infuriated this church crowd. Because here's what he did. Not only did he change the heart of the most hated person in the city, Jesus went a step forward and said, hey, oh, and by the way, I'm still the Son of God. Mic drop. He says, changed man. He said yes. And by the way, in case you forgot, he said yes because I'm still the Son of God. And here's the sad part. If you continue to read, we find out that it doesn't pique their curiosity even a bit. They get hardened hearts. They don't start asking why. They don't start asking, man, could he really be? Could he really be the Son of God? But they just get hardened hearts to continue in their own confirmation bias. It's so heartbreaking. You know, I think we can't forget that a curious heart always leads to an experience of grace. But I'm even more so reminded, I think we're the most curious after we receive grace. In my mind, I kind of go like, hey man, why me? I'm not worthy of this. And so my curiosity is piqued a little bit more. And I was completely reminded of that this week. I've got 3 boys that are everything you can think all boys are. And so I've told you that time and time again. So Friday, we're out on a run. And I have 2 of them. They weren't at school because they had a professional development day at school, and so kids were out. So during my lunch break, I've got to run, and I've got the 2 on bicycles, the 2 middle one and the youngest son, and we're going, and they're fighting the entire time. I mean, they're yelling at each other. They're screaming. So I'm like screaming at them, just stop. Can we just, me run and you ride your bike? I don't want any of the extra. This is not hard. But as you can imagine, one is mad that the other one is ahead of him, right? The youngest one is mad that the middle son is. I was like, hey, look, get used to it. It's going to happen the rest of your life. These older kids are going to be more athletic than you, okay? And so he gets timeout. He has consequences. He has all these things. We get back home. I'm kind of dying because I need to run more. Like I'm out of breath. And so he's getting ready to have his consequences. And I showed him some grace. And I reminded him that I'm going to show you grace because Jesus shows me grace when I do exactly what you do, just in different ways. And so I want you to know that. I'm showing you some grace. And so he serves a little bit of his time out, and then he comes back. And after the grace, see, he's been asking for about 1.5 years about Jesus, all things Jesus. I've pushed him away, tried to get him to ask more by letting him have God stir in his heart. And Friday, after an experience of grace, my youngest son gave his life to Christ. He said yes. And now that's not even the end of it. On a ping pong ball right there, my 2 other sons wrote his name on it. And they've been praying for him that he would say yes to Jesus. I can't even begin to tell you that when you stop to focus on the one, God moves. Do not let that go by. God moves. They didn't share a gospel message with him. They didn't do any of those types of things. They simply prayed for him, and over the course of a couple of weeks, which is about 1.5 years in the making, my son said yes to Jesus. There is no greater moment, and it happened because his curious little heart experienced grace like he'd never had. And so there's 2 people in the room. There are people that have said yes. I'm a follower of Jesus. I've said yes to Jesus. I think a couple of challenges for you out of this. I dare you this week to let your curiosity be piqued about Jesus like it's never been. I do. Examine your faith. Examine where it is. Examine what you think and what you believe. And just see what God does. More importantly, examine the grace that he shows. The first big challenge is to continue to pray for your one, that they would experience the grace of Jesus like they've never experienced before. Nothing more, nothing less. Just pray. We have the prayer books that are in the seat. It'll help you walk through on how to pray. Just pray for your one. Continue to do that. And when your one comes up, I got to tell both my boys, I said, hey, guess what? You've got to find another one that you can be praying for. And I also got to tell them this. You know how you've been praying? God heard and he answered with a yes. The God of the universe heard your prayer. And then the other thing is this, for those that are followers of Jesus. At some point, you've got to say, what do I need to be more curious about? What is my next step in my faith? Is it getting more involved? Is it serving in here, in Kids Point, or wherever else that may be when we serve throughout the city? Is it getting involved in a connect group, which starts next week? Is it finding out more about our core groups that just go deeper into understanding what the Bible says? What is your next step? Be curious. Don't continue to do the same things you've always done, but be curious about who Jesus is and how he can use you. And then the other person in the room is that person that says, I've never said yes to Jesus. I'm still processing my thoughts about Christianity. My challenge to you is be as curious as you have ever been. Ask more questions. Find someone, ask them questions. Don't let confirmation bias turn you into a grumbling Pharisee or hypocrite like we see here in the scriptures. But ask, find out, God, what are you doing in me?